What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Thursday edition of BYP from our good friends over at One Life Tequila, woman-owned, certified, organic, award-winning, ultra-premium tequila. And I certainly can use a shot or two with the voice being as bad as it is today. But we've got a little, I guess you can say, another starter joining us on the roster, which is always good. Our good friend Nick Kosko from On3 Sports does a wonderful job covering college sports, whether it's the hoops or college football. And I saw, by the way, I saw you with a little column, a little talking about Jimmy Leonard. Is this, can we confirm or deny this nice little write-up, this article setting the stage, maybe there for the new defensive coordinator for the Eagles? That's a nice little article you shot out there.
No, of course. I mean, I'm just aggregating those reports, of course. I'm just trying to bring the people the news here. I mean, if I was a newsbreaker, I think I'd be a much more esteemed reporter in this business. But no, I mean, just based on what we've seen, what we've reported, what we've aggregated, and what we've compiled together, he's not going to be the Eagles defensive coordinator. It was an interesting look at Jim Leonard. They interviewed him. I actually found this hard to believe that he was actually going to get hip surgery this year and take a year off from coaching after he was let go from the Wisconsin program, or I should say after Luke Fickell elected to not keep him on staff because, again, he was passed over for the head coaching job with his alma mater, the Badgers, right there. So interesting look by the Eagles dipping into the college pool, should we say. The Eagles have looked into Jim Leonard. I think he's a great defensive mind. He has the NFL experience, having played in the league for a while. Yep. Never coached in the NFL, but again, another intriguing look, bringing a young guy to the staff. I thought that would be an interesting hire. They also looked at Michigan defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. No word on that. Obviously, we saw Vance Joseph. He's going back to Denver as the defensive coordinator under Sean Payton. So I don't know where the Eagles are going to go from here in terms of their defensive coordinator search, but obviously as a reporter and a fan of the Eagles, I mean, it is kind of weird. There's a little bit of a college crossover now for our company, so we get to kind of mesh those two worlds together. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Jim Leonard. I mean, I think he is going to take that year off now from coaching. I guess they decided it was not the right fit at the time, for at least as of right now, for Leonard to go to Philadelphia and be the new DC. But hey, if they're looking into Jesse Minter, obviously the Michigan defense has done some good things, but who knows? I mean, I would say if they're going to go the college route, I would have preferred Leonard if I'm the Eagles, but Minter might not be a bad option either. But obviously, there's going to be looking. This is going to be a more extensive search, I would say, for the Eagles at defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think they go outside the building for a defensive coordinator than an offensive coordinator. So I'll throw a name out there. Would you even throw and see if it sticks and have a conversation with Rex Ryan?
I know that came up as Sean Payton apparently, or at least reportedly, wanted him. He's the top choice. But let's just say, Rich, if that was true, let's just say Sean Payton wanted Rex Ryan as his number one choice. Now, Rex Ryan, great defensive mind, great head coach. No, of course not. He led the Jets to 2 AFC title games, and that was the peak of the Rex Ryan era as a head coach. And we all remember, let's go get a bleep snack during Hard Knocks. That's the epitome of what we remember of Rex Ryan as a head coach. But he's a great defensive mind. There's no doubt this guy knows how to coach defense. Now, if I'm the Eagles, would I want Rex Ryan? I mean, maybe not necessarily. The guy's been out of coaching for a handful of years, being on TV. And let's just go back to what I was saying before. Let's just say Rex Ryan was the top choice for Sean Payton. If that's the case, if you're Rex Ryan, if you're going to come back to coaching, at least as a DC, why would you not want to coach under Sean Payton? So my question is, the TV gig's probably too good for him. He's so good on TV. Whether you like him or you hate him, Rex Ryan's good on TV. I actually enjoy watching him because he's a little outlandish. He does make some good points. He's great for TV now at this point. He's been out of the league too long, in my mind, for him to come back and coach. Especially the Eagles defense going into 2023 is going to be one of those defenses that is going to be a mix of savvy veterans and young guys. Does that style mesh with what Nick Sirianni has? Look, you have Nick Sirianni, young head coach, obviously a star head coach now. Brian Johnson is the expected offensive coordinator now for the Eagles. It's not confirmed. I know that they're probably poking around a little bit, but he's going to be the guy. Brian Johnson, not too much older than quarterback Jalen Hurts. This is a guy who's only in his 30s, all right? This is a guy who was a college star at Utah. Rex Ryan. Look at that mix right there. Sirianni, Johnson, Rex Ryan. Yeah. To me, I don't think it's a fit logically for the Eagles.
But sometimes it actually, let me counter that. Sometimes it is a fit and it can work because you want a guy that's got experience to also be able to whisper in your ear a little bit. Hey, this is not the scheme. Let's switch it up. This is what I think. Here's my years of experience. Right. And to your point, you said it. He's a hell of a defensive coordinator. And I'll give you the perfect example. You look at Brian Dable and then you look at Wink. You have younger, and then you have older, so it can mesh. And further to kind of dig a little deeper, you said, well, why wouldn't you want to be on, say, Sean Payton's staff? Well,
and that's a great defense right there in Denver. It's already a really good defense.
It is, but here's the thing. That offense needs to do something, and I'm not entirely sold on the Russell Wilson project, and yet you still have to go through what? Which teams in the AFC? More importantly, the AFC West. The Eagles just got to the Super Bowl. They're a young team. I get it. Mix and match transition, young players on the defensive end with some veterans. I look at that NFC East, and you bring in that type of character and that type of aggressive scheme that we already saw just accumulate, 70-something odd sacks. I mean, look, if for anything, he's going to give you a hell of a soundbite every week.
That he is.
Now, here's the other problem with that, though, because I know people watching this are going to say, well, wait a second, what if, and I know where they're going, what if, because Rex Ryan has that braggadocious, big personality, who's not to say he might have aspirations of being a head coach down the road? Eagles maybe trip up 7-10, 6-11. Sirianni starts yipping and yapping, and the bloom's off the rose. All right, here you go. You might have to worry about sliding in Rex if it doesn't pan out. So
that's an absurd take. That's an absurd. I mean,
hold on a second. Why is that an absurd take?
If you're expecting the Eagles if you're expecting the Eagles to drop from 14-3 to 6-11 and 7-10, then who got hurt?
Oh, hold on a second. Wait a second. What happened with the Rams? Injuries happen in the NFL. Do they not?
Of course they do.
I'm not.
But I'm not here projecting next year's record. And
I'm not projecting next year's record. Maybe I didn't clarify. I'm saying down the road. If Rex is a defensive coordinator and they struggle down the road, I'm not saying next year.
You have to make that point a little bit clear there. I mean, I know you're down. I know you're suffering from the allergies and calling 20 fights, and you're not having your little hottie toddy right now. But I mean, come on, man. You got to make sure you got to clarify it's not 2023 and it's actually 2026, 2027. Maybe they win a Super Bowl. Maybe they lose.
This guy set parameters on the show. This guy set parameters, and you're right. I don't have the hot toddy. I need to have a little shot with my good friends over at one with Light Tequila. All right, I'll set it for you. I'll clarify, not next year. Make me straight now. Let's just say this is fantasy world right now. They hire Rex Ryan. They win 11 games next year. They lose in the playoffs. The following year, they only win 10. Rex is still there. Then maybe the following year, they go 6-11, and it kind of goes Chip Kelly-ish south. All I'm saying is you have to be careful with those types of individuals who might always have the itch to be that head coach, even though they're a coordinator.
Well, that's right. That's where I hear you. But I would say in that case, I know we're in fantasy world right now, but if we're talking about that type of scenario, why are they 11-6, get knocked out early? Why are they 10-7, get knocked out early again? Why do they go 6-11 and don't make the playoffs?
Fair point.
Right. It's also, that could either be because Sirianni has worn out his welcome and his style, which style-wise, just to go off on a little tangent, I don't think his style is going to wear out. It's just a matter of who's on the roster, how can they develop, and it's a matter of Jalen Hurts and the rest of the team. If they're that bad in 3 years where they have a losing record and Rex Ryan's your defensive coordinator, do you really think Jeffrey Lurie is going to say, you know what, we want Rex Ryan to replace Nick Sirianni as the head coach?
I'm throwing out stuff to you just to see if you're going to swat it back. No, I don't really think it, but
right. And you want me to swat it back? I just swatted her back at you and went over your head. Baby. That's not going to happen.
Hold on. This is the same freaking franchise that years ago decided, wait, let me take a defensive coordinator and make him an offensive coordinator.
That was an Andy Reid move, I would say. And then that was towards the end, right when Andy Reid wore his welcome in Philly. And look what happened. He got fired, and Jeffrey Lurie actually has not made a bad coaching hire since he became owner. Chip Kelly has had his success. The problem was he made Chip Kelly GM, and sure enough, we ended up with, as a fan base, we ended up with Doug Peterson. And look, that gets you a Super Bowl. And then he wore his welcome, and now you have Sirianni 2 years in, you get to a Super Bowl. So Lurie has not made a bad coaching hire. Now, I don't know where they're going to go with defensive coordinator. I think the guys that they are interviewing right now, obviously Vance Joseph, former head coach, former defensive coordinator. He's still youngish in the league. I see the kind of style they want to go towards. I know Vic Fangio was basically secretly on the staff before the Super Bowl in some kind of consultant role. Everyone thought, well, that's going to be the direct link. If Jonathan Gannon gets a job, Vic Fangio is the new defensive coordinator. Now, as an Eagle fan, And if I'm looking at from an organizational perspective, I would have liked Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator, but obviously he decided to take his talents to South Beach to take a quote out of LeBron right there to go to the Dolphins. So, and the fact that they're interviewing more college guys means to me that Nick Sirianni wants to keep that young, vibrant personality in there. You can get a hard ass like Rex Ryan if you want to, but I think just based on the way Sirianni has built his style, his staff, it's a bunch of young guys. I don't know if you saw the report. I think it was last week before Gannon became head coach, or right after he became head coach of the Cardinals. There a report surfaced that the Eagles were trying to give Gannon head coaching type money to stay as a defensive coordinator.
Right.
I think Eagle fans would have rioted after that, or maybe tried to climb the greased poles at that point because of of what happened in the Super Bowl and what happened prior to the great run down the stretch last year, and obviously the entirety of 2022 stat wise. I mean, I at this point it's like it's a wait and see approach. I don't think this is not going to be solved within the next week, I would say.
No, but here's the thing, and listen, what happens is you start to pillage coaches, right? Because they did it with Joe Casper, the safeties coach. He's now down there in Miami. But I think Gannon, we forget, because of Gannon, look what that defense was able to do. They also had the players in place. They had 3 players that had double-digit sacks, which is right. Hassan Reddick looked like an all-pro. You can argue defensive player of the year.
Right. I can't sit here and argue that Jonathan Gannon was a terrible defensive coordinator.
But that's my point.
Right.
You can't, because without that defense or the scheme, who's to say they're going to have the type of season that they
right. And
have?
the people that use I want to say the excuse or the argument of, well, they didn't play any good quarterbacks. Well, yeah, they were dominant all year. You might have lucked out with who you played, but you have to play who you play, and they did dominate throughout the entire year. Now, who they struggle with? Patrick Mahomes. I think anybody in the world is going to struggle with Patrick Mahomes at a certain point.
Yeah.
Now, again, not to rehash our Super Bowl conversation, but did he make the second half adjustments? No, he didn't. Yeah, that's a big flaw in the system for Jonathan Gannon right there. Did he really have to make many adjustments this year? Not really. Even look at the game against Green Bay. The Eagles dominated the regular season on the ground against the Packers. Mm-hmm. But did Aaron Rodgers play well? Relatively so. If memory serves correctly, they had a tough time stopping Aaron Rodgers. But again, they controlled the ball so well, and they wanted a shootout by running the football somehow. So Gannon has his flaws. He had his success in Philadelphia. I think it was the right time to part ways because, again, he's not going to turn down a head coaching job. Whether the Eagles wanted to keep him or not, but I think you need a fresh face in there. It's just a matter of who you're going to get. Do you get a guy like you're not getting Jim Leonard now, but do you pursue Jesse Minter from Michigan now, or do you pursue other assistant coaches that have been linked to this type of staff that Sirianni wants to build?
Yeah, fun when it comes to role playing. By the way, I just throw things fantasy and just. Like I'm a tumble block back.
Well, in my defense, you did want me to swat it back, and I did. So I think I hit a 3-run shot over your head. So,
well, pitchers and catchers soon. We'll get into that. Nick Kosko from On3 Sports join us at Nick Kosko 59. All right, let's get into a little college hoops. I love this slate on Saturday. By the way, I was looking through this AP in college poll. Houston, Bama, Kansas, UCLA kind of flip-flop, and Purdue. Virginia, Arizona, and I believe Baylor and Marquette kind of rounded out. I know we've kind of said this ad nauseum, but let's start with Purdue. They've got Indiana this weekend. They've dropped, 3 of 5, 2 of 3, including 2 bad losses to Northwestern and Maryland. They beat, who was it? Might have been.
Beat Ohio State, within the last couple of days. Yeah, back Sunday.
They're going to get bounced early, and I'm going to tell you why. They have no depth whatsoever.
What a shit! And this is quite the change. I mean, again, I think we might have teased this before. What, like 3 weeks ago? Like, this is a team that's subject to getting bounced early.
Go ahead, call me out on it.
I'm not calling you. I think I'm calling both of us out because this is a team that we've propped up as the best team just because of Zach Edey. But I mean, you do make a good point. I mean, the way they're playing right now, they are a prime candidate to get bounced in the round of 32. You can't sugarcoat that.
How much more do you want this kid to do? 26, 18, 24, 14, 33, 18, 38. I mean, can someone else on Purdue friggin' step up? Some of the guards step up and help this kid out?
My only counter my only counter to that argument is, we say it all the time. I know it's a very cliche type of argument regardless of the sport, but it's like, you want to get those losses out of the way now. But is that necessarily a good thing for college basketball? Or do you want to go? I mean, generally the hot teams are the ones that go all the way.
Yeah.
But this team's been great all year, aside from losing 2 of 3 or 3 or 4, whatever the case is now. Now they have 4 losses. They're still the top team in the Big Ten. I'm going to judge how they play in the Big Ten tournament because they're still the number 1 seed, and they have, I believe it's an 86% chance to clinch the number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And this is a team that's still going to be a borderline number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So, barring another 16 seed upset, this is a team that's at least going to win 1 game. They are going to get to the round of 32. So they're going to have a favorable part of the bracket in March Madness. Now, are they guaranteed a 1 right now? Not necessarily, but a 1 or a 2. This team, I think, it's hard for me to believe this team's not going to win at least 2 games to get to the Sweet 16.
You better. Or this is watching these, the Gonzaga teams of old that would win 30-something odd games and get bounced in the first or second round, or in the rare occasion get to the Elite 8 here and there. You better, because like I said, they've got the makeup to do it, but I need other role players to step up. And that's the thing. When you start to double the man and you start kicking it out to the guards and they need to penetrate and they look for someone to knock down some of these open shots. I mean, the one thing about college basketball, this, it's all predicated on the friggin' guard play, but help the big man up, help him out a little bit.
Yeah, the poor guy can't do it himself. I mean, it'd be one of the best performances that I've ever seen if he can carry this team to a Final Four appearance or a national championship. But no, I mean, they've dropped for a reason, obviously, with these losses. And, I mean, there's more to go around, and there's more stuff off the court in terms of college basketball right now. And I'm sure we'll talk about it briefly here. But, everyone could praise the boats off Alabama as a basketball team, but that whole situation with the murder investigation, Brandon Miller's still playing right now, even though he was allegedly involved and he delivered the gun. I mean, I'm sure, I know there's people who don't know what we're talking about. Obviously, the investigation to the Alabama program with a guy who's been dismissed. The name is actually escaping me right now, but Brandon Miller, another player in Alabama who is, I don't know if you watched that game last night. He went off last night in that victory over South Carolina. I think he had 41 points last night. Didn't talk to the media though.
He did. I mean, the go-ahead bucket too.
To me, this is the biggest story in college basketball right now. I can't even think about the tournament right now because your number 2 ranked team in the country is overshadowed by this murder scandal. And I hate to even use the word scandal because this is a horrible situation.
Yeah, a couple things, and you're right. And they've got Arkansas this weekend, and you mentioned Miller, 41 points. I think he had the go-ahead bucket with about 0.9 seconds left in OT. They beat South Carolina 78-76. But to your point, it comes a day after the 6'9" freshman stand out as linked to a fatal shooting near campus last month. But Alabama said, quote, he was not a suspect and would remain an active member for the Crimson Tide. So are you saying now then whether he's a or not a suspect and an active member, perception, we're looking at this where if you are Nate Oates, you basically have to sit him. He cannot be a part of the team.
I mean, you would think so, but Oates has come out and said, and I believe this was about Brandon Miller, if I remember correctly, when he was speaking to the press, I believe this was 2 or 3 days ago. He said, this was a situation, and I'm paraphrasing here. He said it was a situation of wrong place, wrong time. But these reported and alleged text messages between Miller and the suspect, which again, the name is escaping me now, the former Alabama player, and it's going to bug me as I can't think off the top of my head right now. But Miller was asked to bring the murder weapon to the scene, which eventually led to this poor woman's death. And I don't see how that's a wrong place, wrong time, wrong place type of scenario, according to Oates. And I don't see how they're fighting through this perception of the program right now, saying, nope, not our problem. He hasn't been charged. Granted, hasn't been charged. What does that say, though? Public perception is almost everything nowadays, and I don't see how they can let this guy play. I don't know if you were watching the game at live last night, but the South Carolina fans were absolutely egregious last night. They were chanting, lock him up. This is a guy whose name is linked to this unfortunate tragedy right now, and he's still playing. He's dropping 41 points, and it's almost like a case of if this, and I hate to use this because now I'm either cherry picking or I'm just bringing an example out of thin air. But if this wasn't the number 2 team in the country, this wasn't Alabama, this would have been dealt with, I would say, immediately. Look at the New Mexico State situation. I believe it was New Mexico State.
With the head coach.
Hazing, coach fired, season canceled.
Yeah.
Alabama has a
It's
murder investigation over its head right now.
Yeah.
And this guy's still playing.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a fair point you bring up, and you're talking about a young man, a freshman who's linked to the death of I believe it's Jamea Harris.
I believe that's the name. Yes.
Forgive me if I'm not pronunciating the first name, but that was in January, and that also was involving Darius Miles's gun.
That's it. Yes, Darius Miles.
And that was used in the alleged used in the shooting. So,
right.
How many games did he miss leading up to last night?
You're talking Brandon Miller?
Yeah.
Handful, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Not
So,
many.
Here's the problem with this. When you start to get media involved, and I'm excluding you and I for the moment, and you start to applaud his efforts for that performance under such scrutiny, now you're kind of walking that fine line where, you're justifying if his behavior, if it's accurate or not, if that makes sense. If I ran with the wrong crowd, if I put myself in a bad position, but hey, I scored 41, so I was able to put that kind of stuff aside. That's a really alarming look. And now you start to get into that, that area, that fine line where you can't really walk that back. Now, if they sit there and say he is not a suspect, then you would have to believe the police did their due diligence. And
yeah, one could hope.
But if you're going to counter and say the optics look bad when the head coach or someone says he was at the wrong place at the wrong time, that tells me, hey, Nick Kosko was at the wrong place at the wrong time, but you know what? We found no wrongdoing. You still put yourself out there. So you had a lapse of judgment. So for me, I'm sitting your ass.
Right. I think you have to, but they're not. And I don't think there's going to be, unless he's eventually charged with something, you're not going to see him sit. He's going to play. Now, it's hard to say out loud whether this is the right or wrong decision, because I don't know all the details of what's going on inside that locker room. I don't know what Nate Oates is dealing with as a head coach. I don't know what Brandon Miller is dealing with as a freshman at Alabama right now, who is that good of a player that, I know people are, bigger talking heads in the media are saying that NBA scouts are going to love this guy as the basketball player, but how could you, it's such a precarious situation that he's in right now. So it's hard for me to say it's wrong for him to play right now. Legally, he's not charged with anything.
Correct.
Now, Rich, I'm not going to say I'm going to put myself in those shoes, but let's just say I was charged or not charged with a little petty crime, and I can go about my business. Of course I am. Anybody in this country is going to go about their business if they're not charged with something. And they're going to, I'm not going to say they're going to act like nothing happened, but from a legal standpoint, he can't be prevented from doing X, Y, and Z if he's not charged with something. So from that standpoint, I get it. Now I get the optics. I would say if Nate Oates said, we're going to sit him amid this investigation. Now, optically and perception-wise, that would look good in the public eye.
Yeah.
Is that good for Alabama's basketball team? I'm talking about the 12 to 15 guys on the team, the head coach, and the whole staff, and the athletic department, and the students themselves. Is that good for that group of people? That I don't know. If he was sitting, what is that? What kind of a message does that send? Does it say we're doing the right thing by sitting him because he's in the midst of this horrible situation? Or are you being unfair because he's not charged with anything and he denies involvement and he maintains his innocence? Those are the questions. And I don't know which one to pick.
Well, that's a slippery slope. You have to remember too, because you've got boosters, you've got people that contribute to the university, then you've got the athletic director. So maybe pressure was coming down. Look, this kid's cleared. He plays. Maybe the coach wanted to send a message, but you get pressure up top. So now you're starting to get, You're starting to deal with that fine
Right.
line.
Is Nate Oates making all these decisions by himself? Is he getting, like you said, is he getting added pressure from the administration, the athletic department? Is he getting advised on this? I would hope he's getting advised in some ways on this situation. And again, we don't know the man-to-man, one-on-one conversations between Nate Oates and Brandon Miller.
Yeah. He
could have done his due diligence and just made the decision to say he's going to play while this is sorted out, because again, it just comes back to he's not charged with anything. He's only involved in name and alleged incidents only.
Now, I'll take it a step further. What if this was something that transpired in late February and they're getting ready to play in March Madness? Guess what?
Essentially right now, then. Yeah, then I think it's a much different question, because Brandon Miller's name was linked later. The Darius Smile situation happened last month. Okay. They figured that out last month and was charged.
Yeah.
The Brandon Miller situation came out well after that.
Yeah.
And to your point, saying, let's just say, what's today, February 23rd?
Yeah.
Let's just say it happened today or tomorrow or even next week.
Yeah.
Days before the SEC tournament. Now what do? More eyeballs on your team,
of course,
on the conference, on your school, then you might sit them. It's the public pressure of public perception.
Yeah, and I guess to your point too, it's because of what just has come out over the last 24, 48 hours, where you're like, all right, how do you play him last night? But no matter what, even if you sat him for a couple games, there's always going to be that populace that says, well, no, you shut him down for the rest of the season, but they're not going to do that. You know that. I mean,
No, I think at this point, if they were able to, I guess, fan the flames and, or try to, brush the flames away, or whatever the right expression is, obviously, if they were able to kind of manage the situation over the last 24, 48, even 72 hours at this point, and still play him and get through the backlash, there's no reason to sit him now. Unless he's charged. And if he's charged with something, then you definitely have to sit him.
That's the thing. Once they tell the university he's not a suspect, then basically all bets are off.
Right. It's just like, all right, our hands are clean. They'll wipe it off of there.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got Arkansas, by the way, over the weekend. Texas and Baylor, you got two ranked teams, 8 and 9 respectively. This is a good matchup on paper. Texas 22-6, Baylor 28. I saw St. Mary's on the Zags as well over the weekend. Any of those games, anything that stands out, obviously, besides the Miller situation with Bama, anything over the weekend that kind of stands out game-wise that you're looking at?
I know it's top 15 matchup. St. Mary's and Gonzaga should be a good one. But I think the Indiana-Purdue rematch should be good. That's out in Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. So the in-state rivals are going to go at it. That'll be good for Big Ten purposes. Just looking at Texas and Baylor, as you mentioned before, the Big 12, I used to always say growing up, never trust the Big 12 when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And of course, Kansas finally broke that mold last year after quite a long time and won the title. But that Big 12 is very fascinating when you consider how good Kansas is, and then people only really consider Baylor and Texas their biggest threats right now. The Big 12 could beat each other up in this tournament, and then you never know what's going to happen come NCAA tournament time. I know there was a wacky scenario that all 10 Big 12 teams could actually make the tournament. I think only about maybe 7 or 8 are going to get into the field of 68, but that's one to watch. I think the winner of Texas Baylor, regardless of what it does for seeding purposes and what it does for the Big 12 tournament, that's going to shape the committee, if you want to call them a committee, the seeding committee's eyes. It's going to shape them who comes out on top. If Texas wins this game, they're ranked only one spot above Baylor right now. But if Texas wins this game on the road, then you're saying to yourself that those Texas Longhorns maybe a little bit higher. Top 10 matchup being another conference foe late in the season, high pressure situation on the road. That'll help. It'd be a big win either way. But I think that'll ultimately, the winner of this game, I guess obviously it also depends on what happens in the Big 12 tournament. But the winner of this game is going to have a big time inside track to a much better, I'm going to call it a draw or a seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yep, good stuff. All right. Good stuff as always. Nick Kosko joining us on 3 Sports College Sports. Checks him out. Does a great job covering the gamut. Are You Wrestling also does play-by-play down in this area at Nick Kosko 59. And of course, Thursday edition of BYP from our good friends over at One with Life Tequila, woman-owned certified organic award-winning ultra premium tequila, onewithlifetequila.com. You got high school hoops later on today?
Yep, Thursday, as we're recording this on Thursday, ACIT and Egg Harbor Township, right in my own backyard for the the quarterfinals of the South Jersey Group 4 playoffs for high school boys basketball. That'll be on Cable Atlantic League Live on YouTube, so be sure to find it there. Not sure of the upcoming schedule for our basketball slate for the playoffs over the next couple of days, but that'll be tonight's matchup, and then Saturday I'll be actually back at Egg Harbor Township High School for the Region 8 wrestling finals, and that'll be on NJ.com.
There you go. Nice. All right, brother. Look forward to it. Always appreciate a couple moments on the Thursday. Good job. Appreciate you jumping on BYP, pal.
Appreciate you as always, Q.